Hey everybody, this is Bart Hanson for Texas Card House Austin, and we're going to be taking a look at an interesting hand that was played at a 5-5 no limit game. Of course, Texas Card House streams live cash games every Monday and Thursday from 6 p.m. Central to 10 p.m. Central. And if you're watching this video when it comes out, doing a special thing this weekend where tonight on Friday, I'm actually playing in a 5-10 no limit game, which should get huge. A lot of times these 5-5 games play like 10-20 games. 5-10 probably going to play like a 25-50 game. And Wes Cutsill is actually going to be commentating on the game tonight. This is on February 21st, and he is going to be playing in a special stream game tomorrow night on February 22nd. Of course, Texas Card House Austin is having their 5th year anniversary party in a few weeks, and the guys from Solve for Why, Matt Berkey, and Christian Soto are going to be coming up on March 6th, and they're going to be streaming a live cash game 5-10 on that Friday. Then they're doing a $300 30K guarantee on Saturday, and then streaming a 5-5 game on Sunday. So a lot of live streamed action coming up. This is our normal Thursday game. This came from February 17th. You can always watch the entire episodes right here on the TCH Live channel. Do me a favor, if you like this video, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. We're going to try to do this on a weekly basis where I'm going to be covering some of the more interesting hands for strategy from the Texas Card House live stream. And hopefully I'll get some hands from tonight as well to cover for strategy here. These particular hands we're going to look at too have to do with large sizing and how you go about hand reading and how post-flop large sizing should basically affect your actions. So here we have Cedric opening for a raise to 20 from under the gun, Dudley flatting here in the hijack with 2 black nines, and Peter in the small blind picking up 2 kings. And of course, he is going to 3-bet here. Now, in general, from out of position, you want to go a little bit larger. I usually like to use the 4 times the raise size plus, say, like some of the dead money that's out there. So something like 100, you can also go a little bit larger as well. He makes it 105, which I think is perfectly fine here out of the small blind. And Cedric is in a kind of a precarious position here because he's opening from under the gun. He's got a flat behind. Ace-queen off is not a great hand here to play from the middle. It might look a little bit on the tighter side, but I think in general, against normal good 3-betting ranges coming out of the blinds, that you could probably just fold here. Continue on with some of your best suited broadways, king-queen suited, ace-queen suited, and consider 4-betting ace-king suited and ace-king off to drive out the other guy as a 4-bet, possibly 4-bet queens plus, sometimes jacks, something like this. He's going to continue on, and it's going to be hard for him to obviously to play this hand from the middle. And I think that even though Dudley flatted the first time, he has a pretty easy call here again. Sometimes when you flatten your flat, you know, your range is a little bit unprotected and you can get barreled off, which makes you have to actually defend sometimes if you think you're up against an opponent that will rightly recognize basically your sort of capped range pre-flop. So we're going to go here 3 ways to the flop. With Peter having the betting lead, you can see the pot down here is $320. Kind of an interesting board here. 10-9-7 with some connectivity with 2 diamonds. And Peter does a quick check. You know, sometimes you can check your overpairs here in a situation like this, on a board like this, in a 3-bet pot. You want to sort of err towards your overpairs that don't need a lot of protection. So probably the best hands here in terms of overpairs to check would be like aces with the ace of diamonds. You could call across a turn with a diamond. If somebody bets here on the flop and a diamond comes, you can easily call. So kings without a diamond needs a little bit of protection. As you start to go down the line, like queens needs more protection. Like I said, it's not the best board here for kings. So I think that checking here is sometimes fine. We can see that Dudley here has flopped a set of 9s. Cedric has whiffed here. He checks, and Dudley is going to take really a large sizing here of about pot with middle set. And this is where the hand sort of gets interesting. I mean, obviously, if Peter has played this as a check, he's going to play it as a check call. And you have to sort of put yourself in the situation of, you know, in Dudley's situation, you know, thinking about the hand. What types of hands does Peter 3-bet here? And now check call almost a pot size bet. This is going to be very, very relevant because Peter really doesn't have ace king here. unless maybe it's ace king of diamonds. And that's because he can't make the light types of calls that he might be able to make heads up. He has to worry about Cedric behind him. So there's some multi-way responsibility basically that comes from the player behind. So he doesn't have to basically continue on with the bottom, sort of portions of his range. So when he calls here, he's going to be very, very weighted towards overpairs, possibly like a hand like ace 10 suited that was squeezed. But I would be very surprised to see him obviously continue on with a non-flush draw hand that was basically unpaired. Now, Cedric obviously cannot call basically what is a pot size bet and the call. He's out of there. Like I said, I think he probably should have folded pre-flop. And we're going to go to the turn with about one SPR left here. A little, maybe a SPR and a half, pot and a half size bet left. Turn is a queen. And obviously that's going to give Peter some extra equity here with a gut shot to a jack. If I'm Dudley, there's really no reason why I'm not going to continue to bet here with this pot. I mean, with this stack to pot ratio. I mean, even if they were deeper here, he is still ahead of the primary hands that are going to be check calling here. Yes, he now loses to queens, but the nature of sort of combinations work is that when a queen appears, there's less of a chance that Peter's going to have pocket queens now, and he's sort of weighted towards the ace 10, the jacks, kings, aces, something like that. So I'm certainly going to bet here. And with these stack sizes, Dudley could probably bet 400, or he could sort of do like a variable turn bet, like of maybe 300. The pot would be 1,500. It would set up like a 2/3 size pot shove at the end, which would represent some polarization, which I think is totally fine. I think sometimes people go a little bit too large on the turn. You have to sort of think about what your range is on the turn. And even though I am a huge fan of making large live exploits and sometimes playing in an unbalanced way, I try to play balanced on these turns with sort of kind of that small variable sizing a lot of the time if the stacks dictate it, and then, basically, leave yourself for a big bet on the river if you want to make your hand basically polarized at the end. So there's really no reason why I would check behind here. I don't know if Dudley thinks that he's getting trapped by pocket tens, that Peter has pocket queens, but there's a lot of cards here that are going to come at the end that are wet. I mean, you have an 8, a jack, a king, a 6. They're all going to put one-liners out there. A diamond's going to bring in the front door diamond draw. You might, obviously, if the board pairs, he's got a full house, but there's a lot of cards that actually might kill the action. Maybe not kill Dudley's hand, but might kill the action of getting a call from an overpair that's checked here like this on the flop. So I would certainly bet here. Dudley's going to think about it for a while, and he is eventually going to check this one back here after much thought. Again, the pot's 920, and Peter has, 1,300 left. I'm not exactly sure what he was, like I said, what he's struggling with, but he eventually checks it back. And now we get a very interesting river here in the jack of spades. And the reason why, I brought up the fact that Peter doesn't really have ace king here is obviously the board runs out in a way where ace king would be the nuts. And I think a lot of, players maybe that are part-time players that struggle a little bit with hand reading, they don't go back to the previous street action. We have a situation here where Peter has 3-bet out of the blind in a very tight configuration, and he has check called the flop to almost a pot size bet with a player behind them. Basically going to dismiss almost all ace kings with the exception of ace king of diamonds, maybe ace king of hearts or something like that. So unless he has specifically kings here, he's not really going to have a straight unless maybe 8s were squeezed and taken for a check on the flop, which would obviously be an open-ended straight draw. The really interesting part of this hand, I feel like, and the reason why I picked it for analysis, is that what if Peter had aces here? Or what if he had ace 10 and it was played like this? Obviously, I think that, some of the time he's going to check call with aces, and some of the time if he had squeezed ace 10, he's going to call here as well. Those hands probably should be bluffed here at the end. They're actually really, with this run out, some of the worst hands that he can have. And it's pretty difficult for somebody to call with like a, a two pairish type of hand, something like that. Like I said, if you're up against a fair amount of recreational players, they're not going to go that deep into hand rating, and they're going to look at the board and they're going to be scared kind of a king. And this is where I might be a little bit unbalanced in my betting here if I was Peter from up front. Theoretically, you probably want to polarize here, give your opponent, less of a chance, a worse chance to basically bluff catch you. Whereas here, I might make an unbalanced play where I make a block sizing here with kings to get called by a set or two pair, and I actually might take an unbalanced larger bet as a bluff. Yes, that's theoretically unbalanced, but a lot of times we do unbalanced things to basically make the most amount of profit in live no limit games. He decides to check here. I'm really not a huge fan of that. I don't even know if Dudley is going to be betting at 8 here. He probably should for value, but obviously with Peter having the two kings, Dudley really isn't going to have a king here, and I like sort of a block sizing. One of the other bluffs possibly that Peter could, arrive here with at it, at the end might be like an ace-x of diamonds that's checked on this flop, just as a reflection of the board texture, like an ace-5 of diamonds, something like that. Obviously, that's a hand that's probably should be bluffed here too. It's just, it's really hard for Dudley to have many kings here when he takes a pot-sized bet on the flop, but I would definitely be betting for value here when I'm up against, live players that don't like to fold two pair plus and sets. This runout's going to hit them quite a bit. Again, maybe occasionally Dudley's going to have a hand like pocket eights here as well. Peter checks, and Dudley just checks right behind, which is really not surprising. And I think Peter lost some value there. I see that wry smile. But thanks for joining me. Like I said, we're going to do this every single week, grabbing some from hands from this TCH live stream. And again, I will be playing on the stream tonight. Big 5-10 game. Wes Cuttsill is going to be commentating, and then I'm going to be commentating tomorrow night at 6 on Saturday with Wes Cuttsill playing in the game. Do me a favor, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and we'll see you next time.